Eurozone Project by Jacob Rasmussen. The European Union is a political and economic organization founded in 1993 by 6 states via the Maastricht Treaty, with the intention of strengthening economic ties and preventing war in Europe. Since then, however, it has grown to 28 members and could be growing. The EU has 8 candidates as possible future members. 22 of the 28 members are part of the Schengen area, an area without border control for its members, and 19 of the 28 members adopted the euro as their common currency. States that have done this are a part of the Eurozone, and the Eurozone has been incredibly problematic for the European Union. Now that smaller, poorer countries like Greece are using the same currency as larger, richer ones, they have access to borrow more money than ever at a lower interest rate than ever. This is because all states in the Eurozone have the same monetary policy that is controlled by the European Central Bank. Now that smaller countries have more money than ever, they're spending more than ever, getting into bigger and bigger debts, creating jobs, pensions, and infrastructure for their citizens. They were, however, able to pay off these debts with even more borrowing. A cycle started of borrowing and spending, intertwining the economies of the countries in the Eurozone. Greece, Ireland, Portugal, and Spain borrowing the most, all different countries borrowing from each other with the newly available credit. Available until 2008, when the U.S. housing market collapsed and started the credit crisis, and making borrowing unavailable everywhere. The Greek economy couldn't function. It couldn't pay for all the new jobs and benefits it had created, and couldn't borrow more money to pay off its debts. This part was true for all the countries who went on spending sprees. They had tallied up an enormous amount of debt from the borrowing that they were now unable to pay off. But they had to pay it off, so all these countries turned to Germany, the biggest economy in the Eurozone. With a very conservative fiscal policy, they agreed to pay off the debts of these countries if they implemented austerity measures. For Greece, this meant loss of jobs and decreased wages for citizens, since the government employs a large amount of the people. This still didn't balance the budget though, since the government couldn't tax people without jobs not making any money, so they still couldn't pay their debts. This problem arose because the Eurozone members shared monetary policy via the European Central Bank and all had different fiscal policies. The governments of certain countries were spending more than they should have. In order to share currency successfully, a fiscal policy must be shared as well. The problem in doing this is it would require states to give up their sovereignty, which is not a popular idea. In summary, most of Europe's financial issues can be traced back to the adoption of the euro in 1999. So, what was done to fix the Eurozone crisis? Bailouts, coming not only from Germany but other countries as well as the IMF, and strict austerity measures put on Greece. For the most part, the Eurozone economy is healthy again. That is, except for Greece, whose economy, although has gotten slightly better, is still in a horrible place, with a major problem of government overspending and a very high unemployment rate. Now, let's talk about Brexit. The UK has recently had a referendum on the issue of whether or not to leave the European Union. The referendum took place in June of 2016. The people voted in favor of Britain exiting the Union. But it's not as simple as that. Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty highlights the measures that Britain must take in order to leave the EU. Leaving the EU is a long process, which was just started in March of 2017. Britain says they want to finish the process within 2 years, but experts say it could take longer. So why leave the EU in the first place? The people in favor of Brexit have 3 main points. On an economic front, they don't like that Britain sends hundreds of millions of dollars a year to the EU headquarters in Brussels, where the money then gets distributed among other EU countries. On a domestic front, they think Britain should have closed borders, and don't like the migration that is currently taking place, of over 500 migrants coming into Britain every single day. And lastly, and the biggest point, they don't like that Britain is associated with Europe. They think Britain stands alone, and they think it should be independent from the European Union. People against Brexit believe that this anti-migration policy is regressive and could have racial undertones. There has also been an enormous amount of backlash from the Irish, because closed borders would mean a cutoff between Northern Ireland and Ireland. And because the EU is also a trade organization, people against Brexit believe that leaving it could have horrific economic ramifications, not only on Britain but also the rest of the European Union. This is consensual among most economists. They believe that Brexit could have very poor implications on the British economy. I agree. Since Brexit negotiations have started, the value of the pound has plummeted and become very unstable and fluctuative. As for border security, securing borders does not require you to leave the European Union, Several countries, including Germany and France, have secured their borders while remaining in the EU. In my opinion, the future of the Eurozone economy as a whole looks prosperous. After the GDP growth took a major hit after the 2008 credit crisis, it has gotten back on track and is relatively healthy, with a positive GDP growth of 0.6% in 2017. Unemployment rates are at a 9-year low in the Eurozone, at just under 9%. In terms of trade balances, the Eurozone is in the surplus with the rest of the world, but the surplus is shrinking. Overall, the Eurozone economy is in good health, but is slowing down slightly.